Welcome to Story Tales. Please like this video and subscribe to Story Tales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin.
The elegant hall in Charleston stretched before Arden Lark like a beautiful lie. White roses cascaded down marble columns, their petals perfect and untouched. Crystal glasses caught the afternoon light streaming through tall windows, casting rainbow fragments across empty chairs draped in ivory silk. Arden stood at the altar in her tailored gown, the fabric hugging her frame with understated elegance. Every detail had been planned with precision, from the hand-calligraphed place cards to the string quartet tuning their instruments in the corner. She had orchestrated this day like a business presentation, methodical and flawless, except for one glaring problem. The chairs sat empty where her family should have been. Her phone buzzed against her thigh. 52 missed calls. The screen lit up with another incoming call from Mother. Arden let it ring. Ms. Lark. The wedding coordinator approached with careful steps, her clipboard clutched against her chest. Should we delay the ceremony a bit longer? Arden turned, her posture straight as a blade. No delays. We proceed as planned. The coordinator glanced at the empty front rows. But your family, they made their choice. Arden's voice carried no emotion, no tremor of hurt. She had learned long ago that tears were currency she refused to spend on people who didn't value her. The guests who had come college friends, work colleagues, neighbors who actually cared shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They whispered behind programs, stealing glances at the vacant spaces reserved for family of the bride. Arden's phone buzzed again, this time a text message from her mother. We need to talk. Now. She deleted it without reading it twice. The string quartet began the processional march. Arden walked down the aisle alone, her chin raised, her smile practiced and cold. Each step echoed in the hall, a steady rhythm that matched her heartbeat. She had always walked alone anyway. Today just made it official. The altar. She faced her fiancé, a man whose name didn't matter now, whose face had already started to blur in her memory. He was a placeholder, a prop in the theater of her old life, the life where she still believed family meant something. Do you take this man? The officiant began. No, Arden said. Clearly, the hall fell silent except for the sound of her phone buzzing again. And again, she turned to face the guests, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. Thank you all for coming. The reception will proceed as planned. Please enjoy the dinner and dancing. Without another word, she walked back down the aisle, her train trailing behind her like a white flag of surrender. But Arden Lark had never surrendered in her life, and she wouldn't start now that in the bride's preparation room. She pulled out her phone. 57 missed calls from her mother, Priscilla. 13 from her father, Roland. 23 from her sister, Marlo. 0 from her former best friend, who had promised to be her maid of honor. The first voicemail played automatically. Arden, honey, we're at Marlo's event. Something came up with the caterer, and... She deleted it before it finished. The second, it's Dad. Look, Princess, Marlo really needs us right now. Her engagement announcement. Delete. The third. Arden, you're being dramatic. Marlo's engagement party is a networking opportunity for the whole family. You'll understand when. Delete. Arden set the phone on the vanity and stared at herself in the mirror. Her makeup was perfect, not a smudge or tear in sight. Her dark hair remained elegantly pinned, every strand in place. She looked like a bride. She felt like a fool. But foolishness was a luxury she could no longer afford. The reception continued without her. Through the preparation room window, Arden watched guests mingle on the terrace, champagne glasses glinting in their hands. The caterer she had personally vetted served appetizers she had tasted dozens of times to get perfect. The band played songs she had chosen after hours of deliberation. Her wedding, her choices, her money, their absence. The memories came like whispers at first, then roared like an avalanche. Her 21st birthday. She had reserved a table at the finest restaurant in Charleston, bought a new dress, even splurged on professional makeup. The table for 4 had 3 empty chairs. Priscilla called 2 hours past their reservation time. Marlowe's engagement party ran long. You understand, don't you, sweetheart? This is her special night. Arden had eaten alone, the waiter refilling her water glass with pitying looks. She tipped him 50% and walked out with her head high, college graduation, magna cum laude in business administration. For years of perfect grades, internships, and leadership positions. She had saved seats in the front row, bought extra tickets, even sent a printed invitation with her graduation photo. The auditorium was packed with families cheering for their graduates. When they called Arden Lark, she walked across that stage to polite applause from strangers. In the crowd, she searched for familiar faces and found none. Later, she learned they had attended Marlowe's gallery opening instead. More important for the family's social standing, Priscilla had explained over a rushed phone call. You understand, don't you? You're so independent, you don't need us there. High school valedictorian speech. Arden had practiced for weeks, written and rewritten her address to the graduating class. She had 3 tickets set aside for her parents and sister. Marlowe had a tennis tournament that same day. State championships, Roland had said with an apologetic shrug. We'll watch the recording later. There was no recording. Childhood birthday parties where the guest of honor became the afterthought. Marlowe would arrive with some crisis, a scraped knee, a broken toy, a dramatic tantrum, and suddenly Arden's special day transformed into managing Marlowe's needs. She's younger, Priscilla would say. She needs more attention. You're mature enough to understand. Academic achievements celebrated with quiet dinners, while Marlowe's social successes earned family-wide festivals. Science fair wins acknowledged with nods, while Marlowe's homecoming court nomination required an entire weekend of shopping and preparation. Different personalities need different support, Roland would mumble when pressed. Marlowe's more social. She needs help networking. You've always been fine on your own. Each memory sharpened Arden's focus like a blade on a whetstone. They had taught her to be independent by leaving her no choice. They had shown her that family loyalty was conditional, that love came with terms and conditions she would never meet. The preparation room door opened. A bridesmaid, Jennifer, from college, peeked inside. Arden, are you okay? People are asking about you. I'm perfect. Arden stood, smoothing her dress. Tell them the bride is taking a moment to appreciate the beautiful evening. Jennifer hesitated. Your family has shown exactly who they are. Arden's smile could have cut glass. And I've learned exactly who I am. Arden's apartment felt different when she returned that night. The furniture looked smaller, the walls closer. She had outgrown this space months ago, but stayed because it was practical, affordable, sensible. All the virtues her family claimed to value, but never rewarded. She poured champagne into a crystal flute wedding gift from a coworker who actually cared enough to attend. The bottle was expensive, a splurge she had planned to share with her new husband on their wedding night. Instead, she drank alone, still wearing her wedding dress. The silence was absolute. No congratulatory calls, no well-wishers dropping by, no family gathering to celebrate or console. She was completely, utterly alone, and for the first time in her 32 years, that felt like freedom. Arden opened her laptop and began typing. Not a resignation letter or a heartbroken journal entry. A plan. She had spent her entire life playing by their rules, seeking their approval, accepting their scraps of attention. She had been the dutiful daughter, the responsible one, the reliable backup plan when Marlowe's latest drama required fixing. She had subsidized family dinners she wasn't invited to, funded family vacations she wasn't included in, and enabled their neglect with her understanding silence, and no more. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with steady precision. She outlined her current assets, a healthy savings account built through careful budgeting and sacrifice, a solid credit score maintained through disciplined financial management, professional connections cultivated through years of networking she had done alone, and skills sharpened through experiences she had pursued without family support. She was not starting from zero. She was starting from a foundation they had forced her to build in isolation. Every night they had left her alone. She had read business journals. Every weekend they had excluded her. She had worked on professional development. Every holiday they had made her feel invisible. She had volunteered with organizations that valued her contributions. They had created a monster of their own neglect. Now that monster would show them exactly what they had overlooked. Arden pulled up her contacts list. Cashin Voss from college, the one who had started his own gallery and always said she had an eye for potential. Taryn Bryce, the social media consultant who had been Marlowe's friend until Marlowe treated her like disposable help. Harper Sloan, her former roommate who had gone into public relations and understood the power of strategic positioning. These people had seen her value when her own family couldn't. They would be her foundation. She drafted carefully worded messages, not desperate pleas but professional inquiries, coffee meetings to discuss mutual opportunities, collaborative projects that could benefit everyone involved. Strategic alliances built on respect rather than obligation. By 3 in the morning. She had responses from all three. Lunch appointments scheduled, coffee dates confirmed, projects already percolating. While her family slept off their celebration of Marlowe's engagement party, Arden was building her rebellion. She removed her wedding dress with the same care she had put it on, hanging it in the back of her closet. Not to preserve memories, but to remember the exact moment she had stopped seeking their approval and started earning her own. The champagne bottle sat empty on her kitchen counter. Tomorrow, she would buy better champagne. Next month, she would have reasons to celebrate. Next year, they would be watching her success from the outside, exactly where they had always placed her. Arden Lark had been ignored, overlooked, and underestimated for the last time. The wedding they missed would be the last invitation they received to her life. The game had changed. And she had finally decided to win. The coffee shop on King Street buzzed with Charleston's morning energy. Professionals clutched their laptops, and ambitious young creatives nursed artisanal lattes while discussing their next projects. Arden sat at a corner table, her posture straight, hands folded around a simple black coffee. Cashin Voss approached with the easy confidence of someone who had learned to spot quality in unexpected places. His gallery had gained recognition for discovering emerging artists before they became trendy, and he moved through Charleston's cultural circles with diplomatic skill. Arden. He sat across from her, his eyes bright with curiosity. You look different. Different how? She kept her voice level, professional, focused, like you've made a decision about something important. He leaned back in his chair. Your message mentioned collaborative opportunities. I'm listening. Arden had rehearsed this conversation, but not with scripts or manipulation. She had prepared by understanding exactly what she could offer and what she needed in return. I want to invest in local artists, she said, not just buying pieces, but supporting emerging talent, funding their materials, connecting them with buyers, creating a pipeline between raw talent and sustainable careers. Cashin raised an eyebrow. That takes significant capital and connections. I have the capital. You have the connections. Arden pulled out a tablet, showing him her financial projections. I've identified 12 local artists whose work shows commercial potential, but who lack the resources to develop their craft. Small investments in their materials and studio space could yield significant returns while building Charleston's reputation as an arts destination. The numbers were solid, the research thorough. Cashin studied her proposal with growing interest. What's your angle? He asked finally. This isn't just business for you. It's visibility, Arden said without hesitation. I want to be known as someone who recognizes potential others miss. Someone who builds rather than inherits success. Cashin smiled. When do we start? 3 days later, Arden met Taryn Bryce at a small bistro downtown. Taryn arrived precisely on time, her laptop bag slung over her shoulder and her expression guarded. She had worked with Marlowe's social media for 6 months before Marlowe decided she needed someone more established and dropped her without recommendation or referral. "I'll be honest," Taryn said, settling into her chair. "I'm surprised to hear from you. I figured your sister had poisoned the well." "Marlowe doesn't speak for me," Arden replied. "I'm starting fresh, and I need someone who understands how to build authentic engagement rather than manufactured popularity." Taryn's posture shifted, interested despite herself. "What kind of engagement?" "Professional recognition, community involvement, strategic positioning that builds credibility over time." Arden had thought through every aspect. "I don't want to be famous. I want to be respected." "That's harder than famous," Taryn warned. "Respect takes time and consistency. No shortcuts." "Good. I don't trust shortcuts." They spent 2 hours mapping out a subtle campaign. No flashy announcements or dramatic reveals. Instead, strategic involvement in community projects, thoughtful contributions to local issues, and careful cultivation of relationships with Charleston's civic leaders. Taryn would manage the digital presence, while Arden focused on real-world networking. The following week, Harper Sloan invited Arden to lunch at a restaurant overlooking the harbor. Harper had watched the family dynamics from the outside during college, and her expression suggested she had drawn her own conclusions about the wedding day absence. "I heard what happened," Harper said without preamble. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. It clarified things." Arden cut her salad with precise movements. "I understand you're working in public relations now." "Strategic communications," Harper corrected. "I help people tell their stories in ways that build long-term credibility rather than short-term buzz." "I need help telling my story." Harper set down her fork. "What story do you want to tell?" "That I'm someone worth knowing. Someone who adds value rather than taking it. Someone who builds bridges instead of burning them." Arden met her eyes. "I want people to understand that I'm an asset, not an obligation." "That's a good story," Harper said slowly. "But it requires proof, not just positioning." "I'm providing the proof. You help me make sure people notice." Within 2 weeks, Arden had assembled her team. Not employees or hired help, but genuine collaborators who understood her vision and brought their own expertise to the table. Cashin introduced her to gallery owners and collectors. Taryn crafted social media content that highlighted her community involvement without seeming desperate for attention. Harper arranged strategic introductions at networking events and charity functions. The work was subtle, methodical. Arden sponsored a scholarship for underprivileged students pursuing business degrees. She funded a community garden in a neighborhood that lacked green space. She organized networking breakfasts for young professionals, providing mentorship opportunities that created genuine value for attendees. Each project was documented carefully, but without fanfare. Social media posts focused on the beneficiaries and their achievements rather than Arden's generosity. Local news coverage emphasized the community impact rather than her personal story. Slowly, Charleston began to notice, not with dramatic headlines or viral moments, but with quiet recognition. Business leaders mentioned her name in planning committees. Nonprofit directors included her in strategy sessions. Young professionals sought her advice on career development. Arden was building something her family had never understood. A reputation based on substance rather than appearance. 6 months after the wedding that never happened, Arden received an invitation printed on cream-colored cardstock with elegant gold lettering. Marlowe's engagement party. Country club venue. Cocktail attire suggested. RSVP required. The invitation arrived without a personal note, no acknowledgement of their last interaction or her absence from family events. Just her name written in Priscilla's careful handwriting. As if nothing had changed, Arden RSVP'd with a single word. Attending. She spent an hour selecting her outfit, not for vanity, but for strategy. a navy dress that suggested success without ostentation, jewelry that caught light subtly, shoes that added height without appearing impractical. Everything about her appearance would communicate competence and confidence. The country club parking lot filled with luxury cars as Arden arrived precisely 15 minutes after the party's official start time. Not early enough to seem eager, not late enough to appear dramatic. Perfect timing to make an entrance, without seeming calculated. The club's interior buzzed with Charleston's social elite. Priscilla had outdone herself with the guest list, assembling business leaders, political figures, and society matrons whose approval she had spent decades cultivating. Marlowe stood near the bar in a pink dress that cost more than most people's rent, her engagement ring catching light with every gesture. Arden entered quietly, accepting a glass of wine from a passing server. She moved through the crowd with purposeful grace, pausing to speak with acquaintances she had met through her community work. Arden Lark, called James Morrison, a city councilman whose environmental initiative she had supported. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Family obligation," she replied simply. "How's the artist development program progressing?" "Ahead of schedule. We're funding 3 new studio spaces next month." She kept her voice conversational but professional. The economic impact study shows promising results for the arts district development. "Excellent. We should discuss that at next week's planning committee meeting." Their conversation continued for several minutes, drawing attention from nearby guests who recognized James's influence in city planning. Arden answered questions about her various projects with quiet expertise, never boasting but clearly demonstrating her knowledge and involvement. Across the room, Priscilla noticed the gathering attention. Her daughter, the one she had dismissed as self-sufficient and unneeding, was commanding respect from people whose approval Priscilla desperately sought. "Arden, darling." Priscilla approached with her practiced social smile. "You look wonderful. I'm so glad you could make it." "Wouldn't miss it." Arden's tone was polite but distant. "Congratulations to Marlowe." Priscilla's smile faltered slightly. "About your wedding day." "No need to discuss it. I understand your priorities." Arden's voice carried no anger, no hurt, just cold acceptance. Before Priscilla could respond, Marlowe appeared with her fiancé, Landon Price. Landon worked in his father's real estate development firm and carried himself with the confidence of someone who had never questioned his place in the world. "Arden." Marlowe's greeting was bright but forced. "I'm so happy you came." "Landon, this is my sister." Landon extended his hand with a politician's smile. "The famous sister. Marlowe's told me so much about you." "All flattering, I'm sure." Arden shook his hand briefly. "Actually, yes. She says you're the brain of the family. Very impressive what you're doing with local business development." Landon's tone suggested he had researched her recent activities. Landon Price Development is always looking for community partnership opportunities. Marlowe's smile tightened. Her engagement party was supposed to be about her achievements, her success, her triumph. Instead, guests were discussing Arden's projects and seeking her opinions on economic development. "I'll give you my card," Arden told Landon. "We can discuss it next week." "Perfect. I'd like to hear more about the arts district expansion. That could create significant property value increases in adjacent neighborhoods." As they talked, other guests drifted toward their conversation. Arden found herself at the center of discussions about urban planning, business development, and community investment. She answered questions thoughtfully, offered insights based on her research, and provided contact information for follow-up meetings. Marlowe stood beside her fiancé, watching her sister command the attention that was supposed to focus on her engagement. Her pink dress suddenly seemed girlish rather than sophisticated. Her wedding planning stories felt trivial compared to discussions of economic impact and community development. "Excuse me," Marlowe said finally. "I need to check on the catering." She walked away, leaving Landon still deep in conversation with Arden about zoning regulations and tax incentives for arts development. Across the room, Roland watched his daughters with growing unease. Arden moved through the crowd like someone who belonged, not because of family connections, but because of personal accomplishment. She commanded respect that couldn't be inherited or purchased. The historic Charleston Foundation's annual Arts and Heritage Gala was the city's most prestigious cultural event. Held at the newly renovated Maritime Museum, it attracted politicians, business leaders, philanthropists, and artists from across the Southeast. Tables sold for thousands of dollars, and guest lists were scrutinized like diplomatic treaties. Arden had never attended before. She had never been invited. This year, she was the host. The invitation bore her name as the evening's presenting sponsor, and she had personally curated the event's focus on emerging local artists. Instead of importing celebrity speakers or established masters, the gala would showcase Charleston's developing talent and their potential for creating lasting economic and cultural impact. She stood in the museum's main gallery, watching final preparations with the satisfaction of someone who had orchestrated every detail. The lighting highlighted her sponsored artists' work perfectly. The sound system carried conversation without overwhelming it. The catering featured local ingredients prepared by chefs she had supported through her community development work. "Impressive," said Mayor Richardson, approaching with his usual political smile. "You've transformed this event into something meaningful." "Art should be accessible, not exclusive," Arden replied. "Charleston has incredible talent. We just needed to provide platforms for recognition. The economic impact projections you provided were particularly compelling. Tourism revenue from cultural events has significant potential." The mayor paused, studying her with calculating eyes. "The task force appointment announcement is next week. I think you'll be pleased with the results." Before Arden could respond, guests began arriving. She had strategically positioned herself near the entrance, not to greet everyone, but to observe who attended and how they interacted with her event. Cashin moved through the crowd with practiced ease, introducing collectors to artists and facilitating conversations that could launch careers. Taryn documented the evening through social media, focusing on the artist's stories rather than the glamorous setting. Harper managed media representatives, ensuring coverage emphasized the cultural and economic significance rather than society gossip. T730. A black Mercedes pulled up to the museum's entrance. Priscilla emerged wearing a dress that cost more than most people's cars, followed by Roland in his best tuxedo. They had not RSVP'd, but Arden had expected their arrival. Inside, they moved uncertainly through the crowd. Priscilla's usual confidence seemed shaken as she recognized guests who normally courted her attention, now focused on someone else's event. Roland looked around with growing amazement at the sophistication and scale of his daughter's achievement. Priscilla, Roland. Judge Martinez greeted them warmly. "How proud you must be of Arden. This event is remarkable." "Yes," Priscilla managed. "She's always been ambitious." "Ambitious?" Judge Martinez laughed. "She's visionary. The Arts District Development Plan she presented to the Planning Commission could transform Charleston's economic landscape. You raised an exceptional daughter." Across the room, Arden accepted congratulations from the city's cultural leaders while maintaining perfect composure. She had seen her parents arrive but showed no reaction, no acknowledgement of their presence at 8 o'clock. She took the stage to welcome guests and introduce the evening's featured artists. Her speech was confident but modest, emphasizing the artist's achievements rather than her own contributions. "Charleston has always been a city that values beauty, history, and culture," she said to the assembled crowd. "Tonight, we celebrate the artists who will shape our city's cultural future. Their talent deserves recognition, their vision deserves support, and their success will benefit our entire community." The applause was genuine and sustained. In the audience, business leaders nodded approvingly at her focus on economic development. Cultural advocates appreciated her emphasis on artistic merit. Politicians recognized her ability to build coalitions around shared interests. Marlowe arrived during the speech, slipping in through a side entrance with Landon. She wore an expensive gown that seemed overdressed for the occasion and looked around with visible amazement at the event's scale and sophistication. "Who organized this?" she whispered to a woman standing nearby. "Arden Lark. Haven't you heard of her? She's transformed the arts funding landscape in Charleston. This is just one of her projects." Marlowe's face went pale. Her sister, the one she had always dismissed as too serious, too focused, too independent, had created something beautiful and important without family help or recognition. As the evening progressed, Arden moved through the crowd with diplomatic skill. She spoke knowledgeably about each artist's work, connected potential buyers with available pieces, and discussed future development plans with civic leaders. Every conversation demonstrated her expertise and commitment to Charleston's cultural growth. Landon approached her during a quiet moment between discussions. "This is incredible," he said with genuine admiration. "The production value, the artist quality, the networking opportunities. How long have you been planning this?" 8 months of active preparation. 3 years of relationship building. Arden accepted a glass of champagne from a passing server. "Success requires patience. I've been researching your other projects. The scholarship program, the community development initiatives, the business mentorship. You're building something significant." "I'm building what I want to see in Charleston. Opportunity based on merit rather than connections." Landon studied her with new respect. "Would you be interested in discussing partnership opportunities? My father's firm has properties in the Arts District that could benefit from your development vision. Send me a proposal. I'll review it with my team." At 9:30, the formal program concluded with an auction of selected artworks. Bidding was competitive, with pieces selling for amounts that would provide months of financial stability for emerging artists. Arden had guaranteed minimum prices to protect the artists from disappointing sales, but her guarantees proved unnecessary as guests began departing. She received praise from politicians, business leaders, and cultural advocates. Business cards accumulated in her purse along with invitations to future collaborations. The evening had established her as a serious player in Charleston's development community. Near the exit, Priscilla approached with careful steps. "Arden, darling, the evening was lovely, simply beautiful." "Thank you." Arden's voice was polite but distant. "Perhaps we could have lunch this week. There's so much to catch up on." "I'll check my schedule and get back to you." Priscilla's smile faltered. This was not the daughter who had once eagerly sought her approval and attention. This was someone who granted audiences rather than seeking them. Roland joined them, his expression uncomfortable but sincere. "I'm proud of you, Princess. This is impressive, really impressive." "Thank you, Dad." Arden's tone softened slightly, but her posture remained professional. "I hope you enjoyed the artist's work." "We should talk," he said quietly, "as a family, about things that should have been said months ago." "Perhaps." Arden glanced at her watch. "I need to speak with the caterers about cleanup. Good evening." She walked away, leaving her parents standing by the exit watching their daughter command respect from Charleston's elite. The daughter they had taught to be independent had become exactly that, independent of them. Arden's apartment had transformed over the months since her wedding day. Better furniture, carefully chosen art, and upgrades that reflected success without ostentation. She had outgrown the space, but stayed because moving felt like running away rather than moving forward. The knock on her door came at 8 o'clock on a Sunday evening, 3 days after the gala. Through the peephole, she saw all 3 of them, Priscilla, Roland, and Marlowe, standing in the hallway like a delegation of surrender. She opened the door, but didn't invite them inside. "We need to talk," Priscilla said, her usual commanding tone softened by uncertainty. "About what?" "About us." about family, about mistakes that need fixing. Roland stepped forward, his face showing genuine remorse. "Please, Arden, let us come in." After a moment's consideration, she stepped aside. They entered her apartment with the awkwardness of strangers in unfamiliar territory. Priscilla looked around with barely concealed surprise at the quality and taste of her daughter's home. "You've done well for yourself," she said, settling onto the sofa without invitation. "I've done what I had to do." Arden remained standing, maintaining physical and psychological advantage. "What do you want?" Marlowe spoke first, her voice smaller than usual. "I want to apologize. For the wedding day. For other things. I was selfish." "Yes, you were." Arden's response was matter-of-fact rather than angry. "Continue." "I convinced them not to come. I said your wedding was just a formality since you're so independent, but my engagement party was a real celebration that needed family support." Marlowe's words came faster, as if rushed confession could minimize their impact. "I was jealous. You always seemed so together, so successful without trying. I wanted one day that was completely mine. You had many days that were completely yours. My birthday parties, my graduation ceremonies, most holidays." Arden's voice remained level. "But continue." Roland cleared his throat. "Princess, I owe you an apology too. I should have stood up for you more often. I should have insisted we attend your important events. I took the easy path and let your mother and sister make decisions about family priorities." "You let them make decisions about my value," Arden corrected. "But continue." Priscilla remained silent, her usual quick tongue apparently failing her. Finally, she spoke with uncharacteristic hesitancy. "I thought you didn't need us. You were always so capable, so self-sufficient. Marlowe required more attention, more guidance. You seemed fine handling things alone. I was never fine handling things alone. I learned to handle things alone because I had no choice." Arden moved to the window, looking out at Charleston's evening lights. "You taught me that family support was conditional, that love came with terms I could never meet. So I stopped trying to meet them." "We want to fix this," Roland said desperately. "We want to be a family again." Arden turned back to face them, her expression calm and cold. "You were never my family. Families show up. Families celebrate each other's successes. Families provide support during difficulties. You were genetic relatives who shared a house and occasionally shared meals." "That's not fair," Priscilla protested. "We provided for you. We paid for your education, You paid for the minimum legal requirements of parenthood. You never provided emotional support, encouragement, or genuine interest in my life." Arden's voice carried no heat, just clinical assessment. "I survived your neglect. I thrived despite your indifference. I built a life without your help." Marlowe was crying now, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "We can change. We can be better. We can be the family you deserved." "No, you can't. Because you don't want to change, you want to benefit from my success. You want access to my reputation, my connections, my achievements. You want to be associated with what I've built without having supported the building." The room fell silent except for Marlowe's quiet sobs. Priscilla stared at her hands, and Roland looked around the apartment with growing understanding of how thoroughly he had failed his daughter. "What can we do?" he asked finally. "How do we make this right?" "You can't make it right. You can only make it honest." Arden sat across from them, her posture straight and professional. "I will be polite at family functions if invited. I will not create public scenes or embarrass you socially. But I will never again seek your approval, value your opinions, or consider your needs when making life decisions." "You're cutting us out of your life," Priscilla said with horror. "I'm acknowledging what has always been true. You cut yourselves out of my life years ago. I'm just stop pretending otherwise." Marlowe looked up with red-rimmed eyes. What about forgiveness? What about family bonds? Forgiveness requires remorse and changed behavior. Family bonds require mutual care and support. Arden's voice was gentle but implacable. You're sorry you got caught being bad family members. You're not sorry you were bad family members. That's not true, Roland protested. Prove it, not with words or promises, but with years of consistent behavior toward other people. Show me you've learned to value relationships more than appearances. Demonstrate that you understand love is action, not obligation. Arden stood, indicating the conversation was ending. But don't expect me to wait around to see if you'll change. I have a life to live. They stood reluctantly, realizing they had no leverage and no arguments left. At the door, Priscilla turned back with one final attempt. You're angry. I understand that. But someday you'll realize that family is the most important thing in life. No, Arden replied with absolute certainty. Someday you'll realize that the most important thing in life is being worthy of the family you have. You never were. The door closed behind them with quiet finality. Arden leaned against it for a moment, listening to their footsteps retreat down the hallway. When silence returned, she felt no satisfaction, no relief, no vindication. She felt free. The call came on a Tuesday morning 3 weeks after the confrontation. Mayor Richardson's office, with the official announcement, Arden had been appointed to the Economic Development Task Force, the youngest member in the committee's history, selected for her demonstrated ability to create sustainable programs that benefited both business interests and community development. Arden accepted the appointment with the same composure she brought to all her achievements. Success was satisfying, but it was no longer surprising. She had learned to create her own opportunities rather than waiting for recognition. Her apartment balcony faced Charleston Harbor, where morning light painted the water in shades of gold and silver. She stood with her coffee, watching boats navigate toward the horizon while planning her next community development initiatives. The task force appointment was significant, but it wasn't the end goal. It was another tool for building the Charleston she wanted to see, a city where merit mattered more than connections, where opportunities were created rather than inherited, where young professionals could succeed through work rather than family status. Her phone buzzed with congratulatory messages from Cashin, Taryn, and Harper. Their collaboration had evolved into genuine friendship based on mutual respect and shared accomplishments. They understood her vision because they had helped build it, and she had supported their professional growth in return. The scholarship program was expanding to include art students alongside business majors. The community development initiatives had attracted federal grant funding for affordable housing projects. The artist sponsorship program had created a waiting list of galleries interested in showcasing Charleston's emerging talent. Each project built on previous successes, creating a network of programs that reinforced each other and amplified their individual impacts. Arden had learned to think systematically, to build foundations that could support larger structures over time. A yacht passed through the harbor, its white sails catching morning wind. She watched it navigate around commercial vessels and pleasure craft, finding its path through traffic toward open water. The metaphor was obvious but accurate. She had learned to chart her own course through obstacles others had placed in her path. Her family had sent flowers after the task force announcement was published in the newspaper. White roses with a card signed "Proud of You" in Priscilla's handwriting. No request for reconciliation, no demand for attention. Just acknowledgement of her achievement from people who no longer expected acknowledgement in return. She had donated the flowers to a nursing home where she volunteered monthly, reading to residents who had been forgotten by their own families. The gesture felt appropriate. Beauty shared with people who deserved care, regardless of their utility to others. Arden finished her coffee and prepared for the day ahead. Committee meetings to plan Charleston's economic development strategy. Artist studio visits to evaluate new sponsorship candidates. Lunch with young professionals seeking mentorship and guidance. evening review of grant applications for community programs, a full schedule of meaningful work with people who valued her contributions and shared her commitment to building something worthwhile. She had created exactly the life she wanted. Independent, purposeful, and free from the obligation to earn love from people incapable of giving it. The harbor spread before her like a promise. Somewhere beyond the horizon lay opportunities she hadn't imagined yet. Challenges that would require everything she had learned about resilience and strategy. Successes that would belong entirely to her. She smiled, cold and satisfied. The wedding they missed had been their last chance to be part of her life. Now they could only watch from the outside as she built the future they had taught her to create without them. Arden Lark had learned to win by learning to stop needing their approval. The victory was absolute, undeniable, and entirely her own. She closed her eyes and felt the morning breeze from the harbor. It smelled like salt water and new possibilities,